Okay, welcome to our next mini lecture. We're just thrilled that everyone's here for the History Hootenanny. It's all about sports and all kinds of different ways and venues and with film and with music and with lectures with our vendors and displays next door. Hopefully you have a chance to take a look at that as well as get out to some of our partner historic house museums on the shuttle. We're just really thrilled for everybody to be here and with our great partnership with Tennessee Theater as well. So I think everybody has their program and is kind of checking things out, but we're all here at this noon and 15 hour to hear from Dean Novelli, who's going to be speaking to us about the women's story in the baseball league for women. But just a little bit about Dean. He's Oak Ridge native, local historian known for On a Corner of Gay Street, A History of the Lamar House, Bijou Theater, Knoxville, Tennessee, from 1817 to 1985. And I remember your lecture well on the Bijou. That was fascinating. He has previously served as a docent at the Mabry Hazen House and the Blunt Mansion National Historic Landmark. And I must say that I think it wasn't just being a docent there, because I think anytime you get a notion, there are lots of rabbit holes to go down and to research. So Dean is one of those people that once he suspects that there's a story there, he digs in and holds on and sees just what all he can glean from the records to kind of investigate, research, and then figure out the narrative so he can share it with us. So I think at both of those institutions, at Mabry Hazen and at Blunt Mansion, he's contributed a great deal to the story there through the research, as well as to women's baseball. So I think you get a notion, just like folks in East Tennessee get notional sometimes, and you've done a great job with that. So thank you, and we're honored that you're here to share this story with us today.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for coming out to hear about women playing baseball. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. Most people, if they've heard about it, it's because of this movie, A League of Their Own, came out in 1992. It's a great movie. It's a wonderful sports movie, but I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about these people here. These are actual baseball players. This is the 1945 season. 6 teams are represented there. You see those 3 circles? Those are Tennessee women. There were 11 Tennessee women played over the course of it. Now, a couple of things about nomenclature. They then and now refer to themselves as the girls. So I'm going to refer to the players and the women as girls throughout. And they played for the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, which you will get very tired of hearing me say, as much as I'm tired of it. They called it the league. So I'm going to talk about the girls and the league. But before I do that, I got to talk about how this league came into existence, because that's actually a pretty unique thing, a unique moment in time. There were 3 things that had to happen before this league could have come into place. The first is there had to be a vibrant softball culture. World War II and Philip K. Wrigley. So we're going to take them in order. Now, if you haven't visited the baseball exhibit next door, you know that baseball's origins are shrouded in history. Not so with softball. We know exactly where and when the game of softball was first created. Thanksgiving Day, 1887 in Chicago, Illinois. A bunch of young men, the scions of the rich families of Chicago, were hanging out, needed something to do, got bored, and they created what they called indoor baseball. It took off. It became vastly popular. It was known by a lot of different names over the next years. Kiddie ball, mush ball, pumpkin ball, playground ball, recreational ball. People even called it baseball, very confusingly. It wasn't until 1926 that the term softball first appears in print to this game. So almost 40 years after it had come into existence. By that point, America had embraced the sport. And as we like to do when we embrace something, we like to make it our own. So everybody had their own version of softball with their own size field, their own size ball, their own size bat, their own rules. So in 1933, when they attempted to hold a national championship at the Chicago World's Fair with over 50 teams, they discovered that there were almost 50 sets of rules. So you got the formation of the American Softball Association in 1934. They codified the rules, sent them out across the nation, and the game exploded. By 1936, you had an estimated 60,000 teams playing, over 2 million individuals, over 1,000 lighted fields. 1936, that's pretty impressive. The reason why I'm talking about that is that if you're going to go looking for baseball players amongst women, well, there's no professional baseball teams. There's no subculture of it. There's softball. So softball was vital to this happening because it was the only place you could have found women who could play the sport. World War II. Well, I can look around here and see that we're all young enough that we weren't there for that one. But we were here for the pandemic just a few years ago, and we know what kind of disruption that caused. World War II caused such a huge disruption as the men went off to war, opportunities for women across the board. That included in sports. But this would not have happened if not for Philip K. Wrigley. Now, he is the son of the founder of the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company, who happened to own the Chicago Cubs. He was a very forward-looking man. At this point, he had already started developing women in sports. Okay, he was doing ladies' nights at the Cubs, but he was thinking that there was a possibility for more because Chicago had a very vibrant softball culture. And he owned ball fields. He owned ball fields out on the West Coast too. And he witnessed personally that in Southern California, for a local softball championship, 30,000 people attended the game. That's how many would go to a regular baseball game. He got an idea. Hey, I think I can make this happen. He also had the means, and by that, he has the contacts. He has the knowledge. He is a baseball man, so if he wants to start a league, he knows who to call already. And he also had the money. He owned this very successful chewing gum company and a popular, if less successful on the field, baseball team. So he was able to move forward with that. Now, he wanted to make this baseball, women playing baseball, but there were a number of differences. In reality, over the 12 years that the league played, they never got to an identical men's game. The ball was a little larger, the field was a little smaller, but the rules were identical, except for a few other things that Mr. Wrigley thought should be there because he wanted to emphasize the femininity of his women. He didn't want them to be seen as man-like. So he had a charm school, only for the first 2 years, and it is well depicted in the movie. And the reaction to it is really sort of depends. Now, we had some players from Tennessee. They were adult women. They were 25, 27, one of them was even 29 years old. They're out in the world living their life already, so it's not likely that charm school would help them that much. But then consider Cartha Doyle or Mary Nesbitt, who were both 17 and 18 when they went out into the world for the first time. Charm school benefited them. Then there was the rules of conduct, rules that men would never put up with, curfews, dress codes, on and off the field. They had to wear makeup. They had to never wear shorts or slacks in public. And they also had to have all of their social engagements approved, which meant if a fan wanted to ask them out on a date, they had to get permission. Who do they get their permission from? The team chaperone, something you would never see in a men's club either. Once again, the chaperones were an essential part of this vision. Many of these women were quite young. They were teenagers going away from home for the first time who are mixed in with more experienced women who are out there already living life. So the chaperones helped keep things under control. But perhaps the most unusual aspect, the most talked about, would be the uniforms. They played in dresses. It's a tunic-style dress with a flared skirt. They had cover-up shorts, they had athletic socks, knee-highs, and a baseball cap. Rather attractive looking uniform. This is actual players modeling these uniforms before the season began. You'll notice the logo on the front of their chest says AAGSBL, All-American Girls Softball League. This title did not last. Over the course of the 12 years, they changed the name about 4 or 5 times, and everybody just settled on the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. Now, here's a comparison to what Wrigley wanted them to play in and what the women were playing softball in Chicago. You can look at it and you can think, which one of these would I rather play in? Well, when you're batting, it doesn't make much difference. That skirt flares out. It's not going to interfere. The pitchers objected because they were still pitching sidearm, and it would actually interfere with their pitching stroke. A number of them would pin the skirt. But it's when you're running the bases that we get into the problem. You can see here, you're totally exposed. Does this woman look like she's having fun? Many of these base runners had large abrasions on their upper thighs the whole season. They called them raspberries. They basically were an open wound. So to summarize the league, it lasted for 12 seasons, 1943 to 1954. There were 15 teams in 14 cities. There was at least 4 teams each year, as many as 10 won. Over 800 women, and despite the All-American name, they weren't all Americans. Maybe as many as 15-20% were Canadians. Then there was a handful from Cuba and a Mexican, and 11 women from Tennessee. So let's meet them. They came in 2 waves. 1943, the first year, there were 7 players came up. Then between 45 and 47, another 4. Mixed reactions. Some played for a year or less and were done. Some played for a couple of years. Some made a career out of it. Lasted 8-9 years. To give you we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So let's meet the players. They came from 3 areas: Chattanooga, Nashville, and Knoxville. Chattanooga sent 5 players up, and 4 of them actually played on the same team that first year, the Racine Bells. So when they played their first home game, they opened on the road. The pitcher and the batter and the catcher were both from Chattanooga, and then you had 2 outfielders who were also there. The Chattanooga Battery, or the Chattanooga Choo-Choos, as these women came to be known, were dominant. Irene Hickson and Mary Nesbitt just dominated that season. Mary was the pitcher, dominated in the championship. It was a 3-game playoff. Mary won the first game. She was brought in to save the second game, and she won the third game for the first ever championship, while her catcher batted .417 for the series. So Mary is one of the 2 women who's not a native Tennessean. Originally from South Carolina, she was raised in Florida and had moved to Chattanooga just a year or 2 before the league started. When she got up there, she couldn't find any women's teams to play for. So she found herself pitching for a men's softball team. That's where Wrigley found her, his scouts found her, and when they approached her to come to the league, she said no. She's 17 years old. She did not think it was appropriate for her to travel by herself to Chicago for a week, stay in a hotel by herself, and try out. They sent the chief scout down to negotiate with her. Her grandmother went to Chicago with her to attend the tryouts. She was hired. When her brother finished high school that season, he came up, joined the club. He was made the unofficial bat boy and traveled with them as her personal chaperone. That's what it took for her to go. Now, Irene Choo-Choo Hickson, as she came to be known, was known as Tuffy in Chattanooga. She was the second oldest player, second oldest Tennessean and the oldest everyday player to play in the league. She was a catcher. She went up at 27. She played for 9 years. If you play the game, you know that being a catcher is one of the most demanding positions you can play in. At 27, many catchers are retiring. She started her professional career and played 9 more years. Charlotte Y'all Smith also played from Chattanooga. She and Hickson were teammates there. But Charlotte had a wanderlust in her, and she took off from Chattanooga, went to play for the Galveston Amicas, who were known as the Galveston Girls. In the summer, they played softball. In the winter, they played basketball, and they barnstormed around the country. That's what Charlotte was doing when she heard about the league, traveling around, playing across the country. Here's a picture of them all in their official 1943 team photo. The Racine Bells did go on to win the first championship. Now, another Bell, Chattanooga area woman who played for the Bells was Marjorie Margie Hood. She is the oldest woman to have tried out and been accepted for the league. She was 29 years, 8 months, 16 days when she joined the league. She was married, had a 6-year-old. She said, "Here's my shot, I'm going to take it." She had a challenging time of it. She made it through tryouts. She got assigned to the Racine Bells, but unfortunately, she'd sprained her ankle in spring training, and it really hampered her. So she got released by the Bells, immediately picked up by the Blue Sox at South Bend, who then traded her to Rockford Peaches of the movie fame, and she rode the bench with them the rest of the year. She did get in the game, she did hit well, and she did field well when she connected. But that sore foot, if you play the game, you know what a sore foot will do to you when you're batting. She struck out a lot, and that's probably what cost her her chance at continuing. Now, another Chattanooga area girl took a different approach. She could have gone up in 43. She chose not to. She was going to college. She chose to finish her degree. So in 45, with Mary Nesbitt encouraging her, she tried out. She made it on the Bells, but she got released after about 2 weeks. The next year she went back. She got picked up, played the full season with the Muskegon Lassies. She came back the next year, went through spring training, but did not get picked up and got released. At the end of it, this is what she had to say: "I just didn't want it bad enough." She went on to have a career as a medical technologist, lived in the Chattanooga area. Here she is in her team photo. Nashville area players, we got 3 of them. 2 of them, not surprisingly, were teammates. They were on a city championship team that played for the state championship. But they were competitors in the league. So Lily Bird Dog Jackson, she played 3 seasons, didn't get a lot of playing time her first year, but then she had a regular outfield position the next 2 years before she decided to move on to Chicago to play in the Metropolitan League there. A lot of the players found the road trips and the grind of this schedule, playing 7 days a week, 8 games a week, was just too much. If you played in Chicago, you could have a day job, you played 2 or 3 games a week, and you were home every night. So a lot of them went that way with it. Here she is with the Minneapolis Millerettes in their team photo. You'll notice that I got 2 other people identified. Both the chaperone and the manager were from Tennessee. I'll mention them at the end. Now, teammate of Jackson's was Mary Lou Lester. She was another Nashville girl. She played 2 years in the league before she came back to Nashville, and she made a career for herself. She got a job as executive director of one of the community centers. So she spent the rest of her career with children, teaching them sports. Here she is once again. Ada Ryan is her chaperone that year. Then we get to Martha Torchy Walker. Oh boy, Torchy. If ever there was someone who was treated unfairly by the fates, it was Martha Walker. She got her name Torchy because she was a flamethrower of her pitcher. She got it the year before winning the local championship in Nashville. She got recruited. She went to spring training. She did not get selected. 3 weeks into the season, they're hurting for pitching, and they call her up. In spring training, she wasn't good enough as a pitcher. 3 weeks into a league where the best players in the country have been hitting against the best pitchers in the country, they bring her in. It was a disaster. She didn't have it in the first inning. But unfortunately, she got caught in a fight between the managers of the Racine Bells and the league president. The manager wanted to make a point. So even though she couldn't get anybody out, he left her in inning after inning. The fans booed. They left. It was just a horrible, horrible scene. At the end of it, he took her out after 7 1/3 innings. She had given up 19 runs and 21 walks. Both of them are league records. Not surprisingly, she was released, but she didn't go back to Nashville and lick her wounds. She went to Chicago and joined the Metropolitan League and played softball there. Now we get to Knoxville. We got 3 girls from Knoxville who went into that area. All 3 of them were teammates and went up together. They were called the Knoxville Lassies. They all went in 1947. Now, Doris Sams had gone up the year before, but the 3 of them had been playing together for a couple of years, all became competitors in the league. Yes, so here's a picture of them in 1947. That is the year that Major League Baseball was integrated. The Brooklyn Dodgers hired Jackie Robinson to play. Branch Rickey, who owned the Dodgers, was involved with the Women's League. He was worried about Jackie facing a lot of racism during spring training, so he decided to move their Dodgers from their usual field in Florida to Havana, Cuba. And they decided it would make sense to bring the women's with them because they had the facilities. So they all went to Havana, Cuba, and here are the 3 Knoxville Lassies before they go. Here is Cartha Doyle with her team before they're flying to Havana. It was quite an adventure for all of them. They were very well received, whereas the Cubans did not pay much attention to the Dodgers when they were in town, when over 200 young women coming to play baseball wearing skirts got the attention of the Cuban men. So they turned out in droves. So Kay Malik is the other of the 11 women who's not a native Tennessean. She's actually from upstate Illinois, had moved here with her family in 1943. Her father came down to find a job at what is now Oak Ridge, over there on the Manhattan Project. And she graduated high school in 45, and at that point, she joined the city championship Pepsi-Cola Girls, which was the dominant women's club here in town. She had a rough time in the league. She was an excellent player, great outfielder, really strong bats person. But like Margie Hood, sprained her ankle or did something early on, sat on the bench. She got in 1 game. That was only because a player got upset at a called out at second base and got thrown out of the game. She got in for 1 at bat. She didn't get a hit. Then she got hurt. When she was fit to come back to play, they discovered something else that would never take a man out of a baseball game, but would always take a woman. She got pregnant. That was the end of her career in the baseball. But that wasn't the end of Kay. She, at this point, was married. This was her first child, had it in December. Had a second child, but the marriage didn't last. She was back in Knoxville by 1950. She was back playing softball with Cartha Doyle. I'll mention that here in just a moment. She went on, Kay, to be a technologist over at Oak Ridge National Laboratories, where she changed her allegiance to playing softball over there. But when she couldn't play softball anymore, she put the bat down and she picked up an épée. And she started fencing. She's taking fencing lessons here in town with a former Olympian, not a medal winner. And she helped found the fencing club at UT, which she coached. She competed regionally and nationally and was invited to one international fencing tournament. So she did have a second life as a sportswoman. She went to Knoxville Catholic High School. They remember her. There is a picture of her glove and a little cutout picture. That is the only picture of her, other than her team picture, I could find of her in a sports uniform. A little letter with a picture of her and two of her brothers from a large family. Doris Sammy Sams, where Martha Torchy Walker had 9 days in the league, set 2 records that you don't want for being the worst pitcher there ever was. Doris Sams goes the other way. If you ask me, she's the greatest of all time of a women baseball or softball player. She was a natural athlete, was recognized at an early age. She's 11 and she's playing multiple sports. She had just been crowned the city marbles champion. She took all the marbles away from all the boys in town. None of them would play with her anymore, so what's she gonna do? Well, she's gonna go play baseball with her 2 other older brothers. Her father was also a baseball player, an amateur catcher, and her grandfather was a professional semi-pro pitcher. Taught her how to pitch. Gonna come back to that in a moment. She made her debut at 11, 1938, playing in a women's recreational league. They went up against the Goodall girls, which up to that time had been the reigning city championships. They did not know what to do with little Miss Sams. She won that game, and it was the last time the Goodall girls won the city championship. The Pepsi-Cola girls, behind the pitching of Doris Sams, won the championship for the next 6 out of 7 years. The one they didn't win was in 42, when they didn't hold it because of the war. So she was quite popular. She went up in 1946, she got recruited, went to play for the Muskegon Lassies, where in 1947, her sophomore year, she had a career year. They had changed the pitching rules so that you could sling sidearm. Her grandfather taught her how to pitch sidearm. Most of the women in this league had been seeing underhand or overhand pitching. They'd never seen that ball come from up somewhere up here behind their left ear and come straight at their head. Didn't know what to do with it. She went 11-4. She had an earned run average of .93, less than a run a game. She was in August 12th, just a couple of days ago, threw a perfect game. 27 up, 27 down, nobody reached base. It's a story right there in and of itself. Naturally, she did not win the pitching championship because at 11-4 she didn't have 20 decisions. But she was selected as a pitcher as an all-star. She also had a remarkable time as a hitter behind the plate, and she was selected as an outfielder. It's the only time that someone was selected for both 2 different positions for one all-star game. And here she is. Now, if you do that, they make you the most valuable player of the year. If you're the most valuable player of the year, you get to be on the cover of the Major League Baseball Digest. Now, we all have our magic oracles here. We can look up all kinds of stats on them. Back in the day, if you wanted your stats, you had to buy this book each year. So here she's sharing the cover with Ted Williams. Okay, he got the front, she got the back. She was favorably compared to both Ted Williams and Babe Ruth because she was a power-hitting pitcher and she was a pure batsman. How good was she as a hitter? She pitched for 5 years. When she pitched, she batted .285. It's respectable. It's not great, but it's respectable. When she just played the outfield, her batting average jumped to over .310. If she had just been a pure hitter, there is no telling what kind of numbers she would have put up, which is why she was compared to Ted Williams. And then being a 2-position player, the Babe Ruth is a natural. I got to point this picture out. Look at those glasses she's wearing. I love those glasses. My mother had a pair like that. Now, I also want to point out the woman sitting to her right, well, pardon me, her left. That pretty smiling little girl with those pigtails right there. She was signed when she was 14 years old. She turned 15 on opening day. Her name is Dorothy Schroeder. She is the only woman in the league who played all 12 years. So at this point, she's been playing 11 years in the league. She is the only one who technically qualifies to get in the Baseball Hall of Fame because it requires 12 years of service. This is perhaps my favorite person amongst these women, Cartha Ducky Doyle. Cartha Doyle Childress, if you recognize the Doyle name, she is from that lineage of the Doyles. They were a very prominent family. They still are. Her grandfather was Charter Doyle, who was on the county commission. Her great uncle would have been his brother, Big Pete Doyle. They ran South Knoxville for most of the 20th century. So her dad was a baseball player, as were many of her uncles. At one point in time, there was a local club that the entire infield were just Doyle men related to each other. And when their cousin pitched, the entire infield and the pitcher, 6 out of the 9 players on the team were Doyles. So she came from a distinguished lineage. Very popular. Her cousin is Mildred Doyle, which you might know the name. She was superintendent of Knox County Schools for a long time. But before she did that, she was a ball player. And that's all Mildred wanted to do, was play ball. And she played with Cartha. She was on the team with Cartha when she came up. So she went up at the age of 14. She got recruited to the Rockford Peaches, that same team from the movie. Here she is in her team photo. Now, she played 1 year, but she's 17 years old. Look at her. You see her up there in that white T-shirt. Look at that fresh young face. Those 2 women in their uniforms with the sodas in their hands. Well, the one with the pigtails and no hat, she's an all-star player. She would be on the list of the chosen 9 from this league, along with Dora Sams. Both of those women had been in the league for 4 years. They're in their early 20s. Look at the contrast in the ages and experience. It just was a little too much for Cartha at the time, too far away from home. So even though they offered her a contract for the next year, she declined. She came home, but she didn't walk away from the game. On her 18th birthday, she married the love of her life, Albert Ab Childress, who happened to be a manager. And they formed a club. And it being 1948, if you know your local politics, there is a disgraced former mayor who needs to rehab himself by the name of Kaz Walker. He sponsors their club. So Cartha goes and leads, she and her husband lead the Kaz Walker girls. And Kaz stuck by them for a couple of years till they brought him home a state championship. Did that with Kay Malik, who came back to play with Cartha again. After that, you know what Kaz did? Dropped the team. They went on as the Royals, and they continued on into the 1960s doing fast pitch softball. But Cartha, she got old. That happens to us. When she couldn't play anymore, she managed, but she didn't like managing. There's a simple reason for that. She said the players wouldn't do what they told them to do. Well, there's one position on the field where if you tell a player to do something, they have to do it. That's the umpire. So Cartha, a pioneer from the beginning in sports, continued on, became one of the first 6 women to become an umpire for the East Tennessee Umpire Association. Simply by being on the field with that coat on, with that uniform on, other women followed her. And there is today a cadre of women umpires in Tennessee who are in the game because of Cartha Doyle, which is part of her ongoing legacy. So, in summary, we had 11 women play. They played a total of 37 seasons with 10 different teams. Careers from 9 days to 9 years, he averaged 3.3 years. That's right about where the men are in the major league. They're about 3.5 years. Collectively, they won one season and 2 league championships, 2 MVPs, and 8 All-Star appearances. And we had the oldest player to ever play in the league, that being Margie Hood. We also had a couple of chaperones. They were both from Nashville. And we had 2 men who were both made it to the bigs. They played in the bigs. Clarence is from Nashville. He has a twin brother. And Dick Bass from Rogersville. If you go through the baseball exhibit, you will find both of them in separately in the Did You Know sections for different things that they did. If you haven't already, this is all part of the Home Runs and Home Teams exhibit, which is free and just down the hall. If you haven't seen it yet, please feel free to go by. It's closing next month. And this is the section on the women that I was fortunate enough to participate on. And I've put this up here because I want to point out the woman standing there in the Sensible uniform with her hands on her hips. That's Jackie Mitchell. She didn't play in the league. She is one of the first women who was hired by a minor league men's pro team to play baseball, the Chattanooga Lookouts, back in the 1920s. And she pitched for them, and they played an exhibition game against a team you might have heard of called the New York Yankees. And during that game, she pitched to Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth back to back, and she struck both of them out. And I'm telling you about this because just to the right of this, in this exhibit, there is a TV monitor. When I'm not talking, they will pull up the footage of her striking them out, and I encourage you to go see it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now. I'm also next door in the exhibit if you want to come and talk to me then. Thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate you coming out.
Fascinating.